Coming up on Tech News Weekly, how to lock down your Facebook account. John Gruber says WWDC was kind of a return to form. Online support for LGBTQ youth. The intersection of Nancy Pelosi and Mark Zuckerberg deepfakes. And Dale Dougherty talks about why he had to close down Maker Media. All that coming up on Tech News Weekly.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is Tech News Weekly, episode 87, recorded Thursday, June 13th, 2019.
This episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by Gazelle, the trusted online marketplace for buying and selling used devices. Visit gazelle.com/twit to buy a certified pre-owned device and get 10% off your purchase.
And by CashFly, give your users the seamless online experience they want. Power your site or app with CashFly's CDN and be 30% faster than the competition. You can learn more at twit.cashfly.com.
And by FreshBooks, the #1 accounting software in the cloud for self-employed professionals and their teams. Make confident business decisions with ease while using FreshBooks. Try it free for 30 days. FreshBooks.com/TNW. Hello, welcome to Tech News Weekly. This is the show where every week we talk about the people making and breaking the tech news. I'm Megan Morrone.
There we go. That's what I was waiting for. I'm Jason. I was like, oh, I could be Megan.
Wait, you know me, right?
Yeah, right. You know her.
Megan, Jason,
She's
Megan.
going to be out next week and the week after, so you might forget her,
Yeah.
but then you'll remember her when she arrives again. Mm-hmm. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's jump in.
Exactly.
All right. If you haven't heard by now, Facebook isn't the greatest with all that data it has on you, but Facebook does offer a number of ways to lock down your account so you can sleep maybe a little bit easier at night. Jason Cipriani at CNET put together a handy list of all the ways you can best secure your data on Facebook and joins us now. Welcome, Jason.
Hey guys, how are you?
Doing awesome. It's great to get you back. It's been a little while. It's also nice to have another Jason on the show, so I appreciate you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
First of all, is the best data protection to get rid of a Facebook account entirely, or is that just what I did? Or does that even stop the flow of data anyway?
Well, I think it's a good step if you really want to get extreme with it. Absolutely does not stop the flow of data. All the companies still track you, whether or not you're a registered user. So, I mean, yeah, if you want to go nuclear, that's a great option. But there's a lot of people like myself and everyone else in my family that's our main method of keeping in touch with each other, keeping tabs on what's going on in each other's life, as well as, there's important groups on there. And some people have to use it for work. I share quite a bit of stuff on there from work as well. So it's, as much as I don't like Facebook, I'm kind of stuck with it.
Yeah, it's kind of the option where most people are. People feel like that they have to be there for that reason alone. So, and obviously there are tons of users, right? So many people are keeping their account. They might still want to practice safety and security and protection of their account data. Talk a little bit about some of the ways they can do that. Password protection is kind of the first kind of the
right.
most obvious step. This is the thing that everybody does. Their account is password protected, but what can they do to make it even more secure in that regard?
Yeah, so I think the first step is getting a password manager, whether it's 1Password or one of the competitors, and using that to not only create a very strong and unique password, but remember it for you. And all of these apps and services are able to autofill passwords for you, so you don't have to go and copy and paste. The apps are built in, whether it's Android, iOS, Windows, or Mac. So first step is create a very strong password. I always tell people I have like 500 accounts in my 1Password vault, and I probably know 2 of those passwords. And so it's okay not to know your password. The second step is two-factor authentication. And what that is basically you log in with your unique password, your hard-to-guess password, and then a code is sent to your device. It's a random 6-digit code that then is required to gain access to your account. So it's 2 steps to get into your account. But the main thing there is when you pick a password manager, all of them support two-factor authentication codes. And so instead of setting it up to receive that code through text messaging, which may seem very convenient, in reality, it's very insecure. Just this week, a fellow writer at ZDNet, where I also freelance and do work for, had his T-Mobile SIM card hijacked which then gave the hackers access to his Twitter, Gmail, Facebook, and all his other accounts because they were able to take over his phone number where his codes were sent. So strong password, two-factor authentication that is used in an app and not through text messaging, I think is a great start to keeping your account secure.
So a lot of people these days are sort of deleting all their past tweets on Twitter. There's like software that will let you just like get rid of that because, it might come up and, there's no context and you don't really know. And so it's just easier to delete. Now, talk about limit past posts on Facebook. Is that the same thing?
Yeah, basically it is to an extent. It doesn't delete everything off of your Facebook account. But I think the way we've all used social media has changed quite a bit over the years. In the past 10 years, what I posted on Facebook 10 years ago was not what I post now. And we've become more aware of a public post versus a friends only post. And so what limit past tweets does, it's a one button click that takes all of your old public posts and drops them down to friends only. So those posts will all of a sudden, disappear from your public timeline and only your friends will be able to see them. Now, if you want to go in and delete them, you have to do that individually, but it's also a good way of maybe not having context around a post, but if you posted personal information years ago and you forgot all about it, that can be used in, social engineering attacks to gain access to your cellular account or other methods. It's a good way of taking all of that offline, or at least from the public domain, in one click.
Yeah, no kidding. I'm going through my head thinking I need to do that, and then I remembered I don't have a Facebook account anymore. So that point is moved for me. But I should tell my wife about that. She should know. I was surprised when I saw, at least as relates to Twitter, and definitely with Facebook, when I did have an account, how many apps I had granted access to. Mind you, I had my Facebook account, from probably 2007 or somewhere around there. So a long time, and over the course of that time, you just end up granting these things, you don't think about it anymore, and then you go back and you see this huge list and you're like, holy cow, I don't even know what that company is anymore. How can people trim this number down? What are some of the side effects that they might encounter as a result?
Yeah, that's a great point. So Facebook actually gives you a list of all the apps that have been approved to access your account. And it's so easy to open an app, so you sign in with Facebook, tap that, and now that app has access to your Facebook account and whatever information is included in that. But long term, developers abandon apps at some point, or hackers get into those databases of those apps, who then in turn gain access to your Facebook information. We saw it with the Cambridge Analytica stuff, where it wasn't necessarily someone who approved Cambridge Analytica access to that app, but they were still able to collect all that data, and then it turned into the scandal that thankfully happened. I was surprised as well a couple of years ago. Actually, it might have been right around the Cambridge stuff, when I went in and looked at all the apps that did have access to my Facebook account. It's in settings under, I think it's privacy, and there's a list of every app that has accessed your account, that you've approved access to your account. And you could go in and manually revoke each one. There's a select all, and you can revoke all apps at once. And then there's even one where Facebook has started expiring apps access. If you haven't used them recently, or if they've had, got into trouble with Facebook, they actually will expire the credentials access to your account. So you could view those as well, but you still should go in and revoke those along with the apps that currently have access to your information.
So I use Facebook, but I deleted it off my phone because I don't like the idea of it, knowing where I'm going at all times and cross-referencing that sort of thing. Is there anything I can do? Can I put it back on my phone and prevent it from tracking my location?
Yeah, so there's two options here. One is you can install it back on your phone, and when you get the prompt on your phone, whether or not you want to approve location access to Facebook, is just deny it. Just completely turn off location access for Facebook, and it can't track you at all. However, if you like Facebook checking into places or using some of the location aware features that Facebook has, you can allow it, but you could turn off location history, which with location history, what they do is create a log of everywhere you've been every day based on where your phone goes. And Facebook provides setting in the app, both Android and iOS, where you could go in and turn off location history. It's in the settings under privacy. I think there's a manage your location settings option, and then location history, you just need to turn that off. So you can still use the location features, or at least have the app installed on your phone and not worry about them creating a map of where you've been. And it's kind of interesting. If you view your location history that Facebook has on you, it literally is a day-by-day map of where your phone has gone. And, if someone was to gain access to your account, they're going to have quite a bit of information for you. And that's really scary.
Yeah, and I get a little nervous about that too, because it was pretty recently that there was the news around Google, and obviously Google, Facebook, two very different companies, although much of their operations are similar, but about Google basically giving you the option to opt out of location sharing, but then it was proven that they still get these location hooks. Is there any indication that when you opt out on this, through the Facebook app or on iOS versus Android, they are actually cutting off all access in that regard?
Not that I can see. Nothing in the settings or anything like that. With iOS 13 coming out later this year and the developer beta already out, therethere's a new feature in there that blocks Bluetooth apps from scanning for Bluetooth devices, which can be used to create maps of where you're at. Like, you go to a restaurant, the same Bluetooth devices are there. Over time, these companies gather all the data. And I've installed the developer beta, and one of the first apps I launched and saw the prompt for Bluetooth access was Facebook. So I immediately denied Facebook Bluetooth access on my device. So obviously there's ways around it, and GPS location is just one part of that. Hopefully Google, and as we see with Apple, move that forward in trying to limit access to scanning for Bluetooth and Wi-Fi networks.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I love this piece is that I think we're in the mindset, it was like, oh, it's so terrifying. I can't do anything to protect myself, so I'll do nothing. And in fact, you don't have to do nothing. Like, there are lots of steps that you can take here. That's not a question, just a statement. Go read his piece.
That's right, Jason. Really appreciate it. And you do a lot of really great kind of walkthroughs and how-tos and everything for your posts through CNET. So definitely encourage everyone to head on over to CNET and look up Jason's articles there. Where can people follow you online if they want to keep up to date on what you're up to?
Yeah, sure. So my main online presence is probably on Twitter. It's Mr. Cippy, MRCIPPY, very easy. I'm active on there pretty much every day. I don't really use Facebook a whole lot outside of just posting and not really monitoring what goes on there. So if you want to get in touch, let's talk on Twitter.
Right on. Jason, thank you so much for hopping on today. We appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.
Hey, thanks for asking me. It was great.
Absolutely. We'll talk to you again. Thank you.
So the dust has settled on Apple's big developer conference, so now we can find out what Daring Fireball's John Gruber thinks all these announcements really mean. But first, this episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by Gazelle, the trusted online marketplace for buying certified pre-owned devices. You've set your creative and your professional goals, but do you have the right tools to tackle them? It's time to upgrade your devices with Gazelle. Devices at Gazelle are available in fair, good, and excellent condition, and all at great prices. Everything from iPhone 6 through iPhone 10. There's also a variety of Samsung Galaxy phones. They offer MacBooks Air and Pro, and iPads Standard, Air, and the iPad Pro. Each device goes through a thorough 30-point inspection. Devices are backed by a 30-day return policy, no restocking fee, and free shipping. All of their products are sold without a carrier contract, and they're all available for support by major carriers or unlocked. Financing is available on all devices with Affirm. You can get instantly approved and pay off in 3, 6, or 12 months. Just select financing with Affirm at checkout. With Gazelle's incredible selection of quality pre-owned devices, they're also an excellent choice for students. Don't know what to do with your old devices? I'm going to tell you. Check out Gazelle for competitive offers on your used phones, tablets, or computers. We all have that drawer of old devices. Go check it out. Sell those devices. They're doing no one good in that drawer. Level up with new tech from Gazelle. Visit gazelle.com/twit to buy a certified pre-owned device and get 10% off your purchase. That's gazelle.com/twit, and we thank Gazelle for their support. WWDC 2019 is in the books, and joining us to talk about it is John Gruber from Daring Fireball and host of The Talk Show. Welcome to the show, John.
Thank you for having me, Megan.
So you write that for a long stretch, WWDC felt largely like an iOS developer conference, but last week felt like WWDC should be what it should be, an Apple developer conference. Tell us what you mean by that.
Well, I just think, it goes back to the history of the iPhone, really. That, even in 2007, when the original iPhone was going to ship, there was a press release Apple issued that just said, hey, we were going to ship a new version of Mac OS 10. I forget what version it was. It was 12 years ago. But hey, we pulled up a bunch of key engineers. We had to put them on the iPhone. It's our top priority. Mac OS 10, whatever it was, is going to be late. And it shipped in November instead of June. But ever since, it really has seemed like, for as much money as Apple has and as big a company as they are, it's been difficult for them to walk and chew gum at the same time, is the phrase that's been used thousands of times. And I really thought last week at WWDC, this was the first WWDC where it really felt like all of the major platforms, especially to me, Mac OS in combination with iOS, but watchOS and tvOS too, they all moved forward in lockstep. The Swift UI, which is to me the long-term the biggest announcement that they had last week for developers, it's launching it on all of these platforms at the same time. You can use Swift UI on the Mac, iOS, watchOS, tvOS all at once, and that's just not how Apple has debuted things in the last, since they've become a multi-platform company. Usually it comes out first for one of the platforms, usually iOS, and then in years later trickles down to the other platforms. And I really feel like they've got the ball rolling on keeping everything moving forward in lockstep.
So what has been the catalyst then to drive them to be able to do that successfully this time if they haven't done this, effectively in such a long time? Why now? What has changed about now that makes this possible?
I don't know. You'd have to ask, they're so secretive about what they do internally and why they've had such a difficult time doing that. I don't know. I think part of it, though, is that Swift UI was conceived from the get-go as being this foundation layer for any and all platforms going forward for specifying the user interface for software.
So
and I think that's different.
So Catalyst was that's a way of porting the iPad apps to Mac, but you also say that in some ways this is already depreciated. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, so in very broad terms, starting all the way back at the Next Step era, when it was Next Computer Company in the late 80s, early 90s, AppKit was the fundamental framework that you used to make apps for the Next computer system. When Apple acquired Next and sort of reunified the company with Steve Jobs and his leadership team, they really got two things. They got a new leadership team, Steve Jobs and his trusted lieutenants, and they got the Next software. And the Next software revolved around AppKit. AppKit is just basically the fundamental framework that you use to write apps for the Mac. And it was what you used to write apps for Next, AKA Cocoa. That's the name they gave it to give it a sort of consumer-friendly name. When the iPhone debuted in 2007, it didn't use AppKit. It used something new called UIKit, which was basically a new version of AppKit, built for touch, and also designed by people from the Next team and from the AppKit team to sort of look back at that point, 16, 17 years of AppKit and say, what would we do differently? And UIKit was always very, very similar and familiar to AppKit developers. So Mac developers could move to iOS. And in the early years, like 2007, 2008, 2009, a large number of iOS developers were coming from the Mac. And it's sort of like a gear that turns one way, though. It going from AppKit to UIKit was very familiar and relatively easy. Going from the other way, if you started with UIKit and going to AppKit, a lot of developers found it difficult. It was, or at least tedious and unfamiliar, because it was UIKit in some ways is easier. It's sort of a tough word to say with developing applications, but let's just keep it in broad terms. And so Catalyst is a way for UIKit developers, people who know how to write apps for iOS, to port their apps to the Mac without learning AppKit and sticking with UIKit, and hopefully doing a lot less work and maintaining one code base. And And I think that's great. I think it's probably a good idea that they shipped it. But I say that it's already deprecated the year that it debuts because Swift UI is, I think, it's certainly intended to be the future of UI programming for all of Apple's platforms. And I think it will be. I mean, there's some chance, you never know how things will play out. There's some chance that developers will reject it. I don't see that happening, though. So I feel like 5 years from now, there won't be many people writing new apps for either AppKit or UIKit. They're all going to be using Swift UI, whether it's for Mac or iOS.
Shifting gears a little bit, one thing that I was kind of struck by, because I follow definitely Google and Android side a lot closer than I do the Apple side of things. A month ago, Google had its developer conference, Google I/O, with an intense focus on artificial intelligence. Just like AI was everywhere. It's basically like, hey, we have all your data. We're doing all these crazy things with AI, and you're going to love it. And then Apple, Apple's event, they seemingly take a lighter approach to AI. I feel like a couple of years ago, there was more emphasis on AI, and we still have Siri, of course, but there's a lot lighter of a touch with AI from Apple right now. Why do you think there's such a difference? And do you think that maybe this hinders the potential of what we're seeing in Siri compared to some of the competitors? What do you think?
Well, I think they're certainly late to the AI game. Google, you would have held up as the corporate leader in artificial intelligence, maybe as far back as, almost as far back as Google goes, certainly from the very early days of the company. And, much like Maps, and Maps in some way is under that AI umbrella. Because a lot of what we want to do, I mean, some of the work with Maps is just the hard work of putting cars out on the road and driving millions and millions of miles and taking millions and millions of pictures and documenting everything. Some of it is just hard work. And there's catch up to be done on that front. But a lot of what we talk about Maps now is very much about AI. It is about talking to your assistant and saying, here's where I want to go. I want to get there by public transit, or I want to drive, or I want to walk, or tell me what to do. Tell me if I should walk or take transit, and then tell me what to do to get there. That's AI. I don't think Apple takes it any less lightly than Google now. I just think they're slightly behind because they got started later. And I think hiring John, and I'm going to butcher his last name, John Gian, whatever his name is, the former head of Google Search, who's now the head of AI and machine learning at Apple, that's a big signal. And they talk about it less because they talk about the experience more. But a lot of the features they're talking about are AI. Apple spent a lot of time in the keynote last week talking about the update to Photos. And they had, again, I don't have his name in front of me, but they had one of the engineers on the Apple Photos team using his own personal photo library. And you could tell it, like his kids looked exactly like him. It wasn't one of these like fake photo libraries shot by a professional photographer, which is a lot of times what Apple does, is they'll load up a demo and the photo reel is shot. They may actually be photos. They are actually photos shot with an iPhone, but they're shot by a professional photographer of professional models in beautiful beaches and mountains and stuff like that. Instead, this guy was showing his real family photos. And the way that the iOS 13 Photos app can now organize your photo by months and years and collapse, and you can go to a view to see all of your photos, but it looks like they want you to default to a view where it's going to skip things like screenshots. And if you have 7 straight shots of a young kid blowing out the candles on a birthday cake, they're going to, using AI, just sort of pick the one that they think is best and put that in the view as you scroll. So I just think they don't talk about it being AI. I think there's a lot of features they're using that are driven by that. And I think we'll see more and more of that as time goes on.
Yeah.
And are they using like something different than Google is using in Google Photos that makes it more secure and private? Because everyone always talks about Google Photos being like, well, I don't want to give my kids, face print to Google. Is Apple doing anything different in that end with Photos?
Well, the big difference is that Apple does everything on device, and Google doesn't. But Google, is moving towards that. Google is doing a lot more on device. There's an awful lot more happening on device with like the pixel photos, like the night sight mode. That's AI, that's or machine learning. I mean, there's machine learning models that are allowing the night sight camera on a pixel camera to shoot in practical darkness. That's all happening on device too. So it's not like everything Google does happens in the cloud. But Apple's difference is that they're doing everything on device.
So as you mentioned before, sometimes what Apple does is just a mystery. You have no idea. So for example, like we got the iPads last year that had the USB-C port, but you couldn't actually use it. There was no USB drive support. But then suddenly there was in the keynote. And so you spoke to Craig Federighi and Greg Joswiak about why it took so long. And what did they say?
I think on my show, their answer wasn't as clear as what I've heard in other background briefings with folks from Apple. And basically, I think the answer is, as often is the case, it's multivariate, and there's just multiple variables involved, and saying it was one thing is oversimplifying it. So I think on a philosophical level, Apple was holding out for a future where even a pro iPad might not need USB drive access, that everything, that as the years go on and we quickly turn to cloud-based storage, that cloud-based storage would be enough on a philosophical level. And it is cleaner. In theory, if everything were fast enough and we always had fast enough network connections, it certainly is a clean way to think about things. But in practice, sometimes you need a thumb drive. It's just the truth. Last week I did that live episode on my show. I wanted to get it posted to YouTube the day after. My video team worked really hard to get it edited, and there we are the day after. It's 4:00. One of the guys has to catch a flight. It's a 13 gigabyte file. How am I gonna get this to YouTube? An SD card, right? If they gave me an SD card, now I have the 13 gigabyte file on an SD card. I could go to somewhere where there was fast internet and get it uploaded. There's just no way that would work in an all cloud environment, right? Sometimes you need an SD card. A 13 gigabyte file that I wanted to post to YouTube, if we had to go through the cloud and they had to put it somewhere, wait for it like on hotel Wi-Fi, and then I have to download it, it's just ridiculous. When they could just give it to me. So why did it take so long for the iPad to get it? I think part of it was philosophical, that they thought maybe they could wait it out. And I think part of it was technical, where these things really are a vector for security problems. I mean, you can get, there's a history of viruses and security problems you can get by using an infected USB stick or an SD card. And my understanding is that for the iPad OS, the iPad OS 13, Apple is using a brand new USB stack on the software side. Like it's not just like, copy and paste the USB support from Mac and just stick it on iOS, call it a day. Now when you put a USB drive in the USB-C port of an iPad Pro, it'll just show up in the Files app. They re-implemented their USB stack from scratch to keep it effectively sandboxed, so that no matter what happens, even if you have an SD card that has some sort of malware or something and wants to auto-launch when it's inserted, it's all sandboxed when it comes up. So I think part of it was a technical issue where you just had to wait for Apple to get around to writing USB and SD card support in a way that they felt fits with the iPad's much tighter security model than what we have on the Mac.
John Gruber is the host of the excellent Apple podcast, The Talk Show, and his site is daringfireball.net. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, it was great talking with you, John.
Take
We'll
care.
Talk to you soon. Thank you. All right, up next, how LGBTQ youth can find support online. But first, this episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by CashFly. You can give your users the seamless online experience that they want by powering your site or app with CashFly CDN. You'll be 30% faster than the competition when you do that. No matter what industry your business is in, if your website is directly tied to company revenue, you can give your customers the fast downloads that they need and expect with CacheFly. CacheFly CDN delivers rich media content up to 10 times faster than traditional delivery methods, up to 30% faster than other major CDNs. Backed by a 100% SLA, CacheFly guarantees the best user experience for all your customers, no matter where they happen to be or what device they're on. And as you know, they're on a whole lot of different types of devices. So you can join the thousands of others who trust CacheFly's reliable network, including LG, Microsoft, Adobe, Ars Technica. You can add Twit to that list. As Leo's been saying for years, we've been hosting all of our podcasts, our audio, our video content, all on CacheFly for nearly a decade. Every month, you are included in this. Viewers and listeners download petabytes of data fast and flawlessly. Twit simply would not exist without CacheFly, and that is the truth. So say goodbye to logging in multiple times a week, or worse, even daily, trying to track your CDN usage. You won't get billing spikes. You'll get a custom plan tailored to your CDN needs based on yearly usage trends. On average, customers who switch to CacheFly save more than 20%. So you can imagine what you could do with that 20% and your time. 20% is actually a lot of time. And just for Twit listeners, CacheFly is giving away a complimentary detailed analysis of your current CDN bill and usage trends. So you can see if you're overpaying 20% or more for CDN. Learn more at twit.cachefly.com. That's twit.cachefly.com. And we thank CacheFly for their support.
A poll of over 34,000 young people in 2018 by the nonprofit Trevor Project says that nearly half of kids between the ages of 13 and 24 who identify as LGBTQ have seriously considered suicide. And 76% of those kids say they prefer to get help online via text, chat, or instant message. Joining us to talk about this study is Emily Dreyfus, senior writer at Wired. Welcome to the show, Emily.
Thank you so much for having me, Megan and Jason.
You bet. It's good to have you back.
You write that despite the fact that acceptance for queer people is on the rise, it's still very difficult for kids to find safe online spaces to express who they really are. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's not just online spaces. This poll really revealed that as much as we have made huge strides, and it's Pride Month right now, so we're celebrating the ways in which queer people have gained acceptance and rights since the Stonewall riots. This survey really also revealed that there is so much more work to do. And it looked at 34,000 young people between the ages of 13 and 24, and it found that just vast majorities of them are facing just still discrimination and pressure from their families, and that they are deeply sad and hopeless. And many of them have considered suicides. Many of them have attempted suicide. So it's I think the most important thing about this survey is that it's a reminder that there's just so much more work to do.
I think it's also a reminder of just what's online. I mean, we constantly talk about all the toxic stuff that's online. I mean, we live in, in a bubble, the Bay Area, Sonoma County. I have 3 teenagers. I'm always like, you love who you love and we love you. But then I don't exactly know what they're looking at online. They might be seeing something completely different, especially now that, because the entire web is not Sonoma County, and also just the whole political culture. So talk about that.
Yeah, so, there's this week and last week, we've seen YouTube come under fire for the way that it's not protecting the gay community and queer people online. All of the major platforms have taken heat in the past months and years for the ways in which they do not protect people from harassment. And when we're talking about the queer community, LGBTQ community in particular, some of the major platforms have a real problem with taking down content that actually would be helpful to people, because like transition videos or things that maybe show nudity or are taken out of context may seem inappropriate to the platform moderators who are not steeped in queer culture, but are actually attempts for people to find community online. And one thing that was, really striking about this survey was that over 80% of the 34,000 people polled said that finding a community online that would be specifically safe for LGBTQ youth is incredibly important. And part of that is because a space like that, whether it's a social network platform that's created just for them, or whether it's, a private Facebook group that they've created or a Tumblr page that they've created for themselves to make niche communities out of mainstream communities is that they actually then understand the context and needs of LGBTQ individuals specifically. And that's really, really important in order to provide that kind of community.
Now, you write how for many of the kids, LGBTQ specifically kids, they prefer digital means of communication in times of need, in times of stress, or just curiosity. Talk about the quality of that digital connection, and whether how that compares to an actual physical experience, like a person-to-person experience, versus getting it digitally. Do they receive the same quality of information, of care that they're looking for?
Yeah, so the Trevor Project, which operates a crisis hotline that is available 24 hours a day for anyone who wants to talk or is feeling suicidal or is feeling hopeless, has always been something that you could call. But we've seen, over the past 5-10 years, this impulse, especially among young people, to not pick up the phone necessarily and make a phone call, but to actually text. This is the means in which they're living their lives. And so the Trevor Project has, met them where they are and now has a crisis text line, and you can also IM them, instant message them. And the quality to answer your question, it's exactly the same. These kids will still be speaking to the exact same person they would have reached via voice, but just now they're talking on chat. And I think, young people today are really comfortable speaking in digital textual mediums. Sure. And I think we've seen, time and again that those interactions can be really very, very meaningful. Mm-hmm. And there's something I think that we can understand that is, a mediated safe space as well about it being digital and over text. It's a little bit less daunting. And it's really hard to reach out in a time of crisis. Maybe the hardest thing to do is actually pick up the phone and attempt to get help. And if people feel more comfortable doing that in text rather than having to have the vulnerability of using their voice, then I think it's really vital and important that we meet their needs. Mm-hmm.
What about health information? I know that, we all know that there are anti-choice organizations sort of masquerading as abortion clinics, let's say, just right. in order to bring people in. Is the same thing happening with transition clinics? Are there people out there who want to convince someone that they're not transgender, but then are offering services, trans health services?
So I haven't specifically looked into that in my reporting, but through my just reading as a consumer, I have read about places that, frame their message to gay or trans curious youth in a way that is intentionally confusing. And studies have also shown that LGBTQ and trans, in particular, non-binary youth really do go online for information about their health, about their transition, about their bodies more than cisgendered and maybe heterosexual youth do. And so the internet is almost like a honeypot for LGBTQ youth to find information because they're so hungry for it. They maybe don't know someone in their life that they feel comfortable asking. And so it absolutely represents an opportunity for people with an agenda to prey upon them if they present that information as something other than what it is. And this Trevor Project survey really found that a majority of LGBTQ youth, not just transgender, but anywhere along the spectrum of sexual orientation as well, have had people in their lives attempt to dissuade them from being who they are, whether that was a parent that they were coming out to, whether it was a friend or a medical professional or someone who was actively engaged in conversion therapy attempts.
Now, talk a little bit about Trevor Space, because this seems to be kind of, obviously it's a part of the project. What is it? How can people get involved?
So Trevor Space is a social media network that the Trevor Project runs. They've done so for years. I don't exactly remember when it started, but it's not brand new. But in the past year, they've been putting a lot of effort into making sure people know about it and making it be a robust community. And the idea of this space is that it is specifically a social network to connect with other LGBTQ youth. And crucially, it is moderated actively by Trevor Project employees. And that's really important because they're saying we want this to be an actual harassment-free zone. We do not want anyone feeling uncomfortable. And they don't want the onus of moderation to be on the users, which is, true in so many other parts of the open web, where the platforms will say, hey, if you don't like the content, it's up to users to flag it. And once it's flagged, we'll take it down. Trevor Space is not like that. There's someone monitoring it actively and will get anyone off the site or the content removed from the site if it is in any way discriminatory. And anyone can join it. It's free. It's trevorspace.com. Google it. You can get there.
Mm-hmm.
And definitely send it to any youth that if you're an adult that you feel like this will be a nice place. If they don't want to talk to you, they might want to be part of this community. Yeah. Emily Dreyfus is a senior writer at Wired, covering technology's impact on society. She is also very funny on Twitter at Emily Dreyfus. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Emily.
Thanks, guys.
Great to see you again.
Samantha Cole from Vice is here to talk about that doctored Mark Zuckerberg video making the rounds this week. But first, this episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by FreshBooks, the #1 accounting software that makes dealing with your business finances painless. Stop wasting precious time creating invoices, following up on payments, and trying to figure out where your business stands. Let FreshBooks help your business be its best self. FreshBooks lives in the cloud, so you can securely access it from your desktop, phone, and tablet wherever you are. With FreshBooks mobile apps, you will easily stay connected with your clients and be able to take care of your accounting anywhere you are, keeping your finger on the pulse of your business. FreshBooks offers powerful features: create and send invoices, accept credit card payments, easily offer discounts, track your productivity, create customizable proposals, multi-currency billing, automatic tax calculations. And would you believe it? There is so much more. Are you busy and forget to follow up with your business finances? With FreshBooks, you can put your business on autopilot. From sending reminders to securely charging your clients' credit cards, you can choose to automate as much or as little of your business as you like. Accept payments online with FreshBooks and get paid 2 times faster. FreshBooks is used and trusted by small business owners in over 120 countries. Why haven't you joined the over 24 million people who've used FreshBooks? Visit freshbooks.com/TNW and enter Tech News Weekly in the How Did You Hear About Us section. And if you do that, you'll receive 30 days free. That's freshbooks.com/TNW and enter Tech News Weekly to receive 30 days free. And we thank FreshBooks for their support.
The era of deepfakes is only beginning to ramp up, but many feel that it has the potential to take fake news to a whole new level in a bad way, particularly as the technology is refined and the fakes become ever more convincing. We're seeing a quick ramp up already. Joining us to talk about the Zuckerberg deepfake that hit Instagram just days ago is Samantha Cole from Motherboard and Vice. Welcome, Samantha.
Hi, Jason. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you. Thank you for joining us. So perhaps it actually makes more sense to begin with the Nancy Pelosi video that hit a few weeks back, which isn't necessarily a deep fake, but it's kind of along the same vein, right? Her audio was artificially slowed. It made her sound drunk. That was ultimately posted to Facebook. What was the call that was made around whether that video in particular stayed up or was taken down, and how that relates to the Zuckerberg video?
Sure, yeah. So the Nancy Pelosi video was really interesting because it definitely wasn't a deepfake. There was no high-tech algorithmic editing happening there. It was just slowed down to make her sound drunk, like you said. So that one got millions of views. It was shared thousands of times. It spread really quickly. And basically, Facebook chose to keep it up. They said that they were going to deprioritize it, which basically means they're going to push it down through people's feeds so that it doesn't pop up on your feed organically so much. And it would put it alongside third-party fact-checker information. The Facebook VP for product, I believe, said that the company thinks it's important for people to make their own choices for what to believe and to give them all the information that they need to make those decisions and decide for themselves. So the video is still up. It's just got some disclaimers on it now.
Yeah, right. And then now, of course, we have the leader of Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, pronouncing some, let's say, sinister things in a faked video post on Instagram. This one definitely falls in line of what a deep fake actually is. Talk a little bit about how this video came to be.
Sure. Yeah. So that one was part of an art project, actually, out of the UK. The art project looks at how companies use our data and data privacy, basically. So an artist partnered with researchers and people who actually make deepfakes, a company called CNET, and they made the videos using a proprietary algorithm that is essentially a deepfake, the way that they explained it to me. But it's trained on 21 seconds, I believe, of a video of Mark from 2017 where he's giving that address about Russian election meddling. And it's smashed up with basically someone puppeting his face to make it look like he's saying something that he never did. He's saying that he's got control of, all of these people's stolen data. So that's the basics on how that came to be. It only took 21 seconds of an original video to create this deepfake of Mark Zuckerberg, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah, very.
And so where does it stand now? Is it still up on Instagram? Did Facebook take it down? What's the situation with this video now?
So Instagram told us that they were going to do the same stance with this as they did with the Pelosi video and as they plan to do with all misinformation going forward on the platforms. Basically, they have a third-party fact-checker system that will mark it as false if it finds that it is false, and then filter it through people's feeds so that it doesn't pop up so much, basically deprioritizing it. So, it's still up. This is their stance on misinformation now, so that's what they have to stick to.
That's kind of the roadmap going forward. So regarding the Zuckerberg video, it's super obvious to me, and I imagine a lot of people, that the voice is not his, right? It's disconcerting when you watch it because it's like, ew, there's some qualities, but it's obviously someone doing an impersonation. And also that, you can spot the digital kind of artifacting around the mouth a little bit. Things seem smeary at times. But would you say like a deep fake of this caliber is enough to fool or trick a lot of people? Like, and could that mean that the damage would already be done anyways, even if it's pretty obvious to some that this is totally fake?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you're definitely right that it doesn't look completely real if you're watching for those things. But if you think about the way that people consume media, it's on a phone, the images are small, grainy a lot of the time, the quality is not good. So if you have those artifacts in a video and you can't really tell like how good of a quality is this video of someone, the voice is definitely not him. Obviously, I think it sounds like Bill Nye a little bit. It's extremely ridiculous. But they had a voice actor kind of mimic the way that Zuckerberg speaks, so that they could then use that to make the end result of the video better, and they can match it to a video of that speaker. I think just to kind of go back to your question, I think it would trick a lot of people if it was out of context from, us saying this is not real, this is a deepfake. If it just came up on your feed organically, it might raise some flags because Zuckerberg wouldn't say something like, I'm in control of stolen data. That would be a tip-off. Mm-hmm. But I think just taking it as a video in itself, it is really easy for these things to spread really fast. And then once the fact checking and the verification goes through, that takes, minutes to days maybe. And that's, the damage is already done. Like, it's already spread. People believe what they believe. It's out of your control at that point. So I think it's totally possible.
And there's already a bias built in, right? Like, we believe what we want to believe. I mean, it's happened to me a lot of times. Like, I'll see something on Twitter that, is not conservative, it's very liberal, and I'll think, oh yeah, of course, I believe that right away because it's kind of what I want to believe, and then you find out that it's false.
Exactly, yeah. I think that's what we saw with the Pelosi video. If you want to believe, if you don't like Nancy Pelosi and you see a video of her slurring her speech or, acting drunk on stage, you might hit the share button immediately and say, "This is hilarious, everybody look." I think that these things confirm our biases once we see them, and that's where the real danger is with deepfakes.
And now we're starting to see some movement in the U.S. government, at least, around the potential of deepfakes and potentially the damage. Of course, everybody, what we keep hearing is deepfakes are going to come along and they're going to make the 2020 election a lot more challenging, or so our awareness is raising a little bit around this. And there's the deepfake bill that's going through right now. What can you tell us about that? Are you aware of the deepfake bill? Do you think it's adequate? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, that bill was introduced, I believe, this week. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it basically would force creators of deepfakes to watermark their creations, disclose that it's fake or manipulated in some way, and put a watermark on the video that would tip off researchers or forensics analysts to this being fake. So I think that's a really good start. Having these conversations is a good start. Having the conversation we're having now is productive. I think any time we can talk about media literacy and societal implications of things being marked as fake when they're actually true, and what is truth, is all productive conversation. Mm-hmm. So I think that bill will be really interesting to see the repercussions of that, the support behind that. But I'm not sure beyond that. We'll just have to see.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I'm always a little bit reticent to say, like, regulation is the answer, because I'm afraid that the people making the regulation don't know as much about the technology as they need to. I mean, I know that this is part of the Section 230 of the Communication Decency Act is what I think that they're trying to change. Do you worry at all that regulation might go too far?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a concern that quite a few people have raised who are much more well-studied on this than I am. But just in my own experience and listening to them, I think that would put a lot of power in the government's hands to decide what's true and what's not. And that's definitely scary to me. And I think it should be concerning to anyone who cares about this stuff. But yeah, it's definitely not the answer to legislate a lot of this. I would rather see legislation around, like I said, like media literacy or ownership of bodily autonomy, or this all started from videos of women in porn that were used against their consent. I'd love to see laws around revenge porn before I saw a law around putting watermarks on manipulated video. It's definitely not the only answer, but it's a start.
Yeah, and not only that, like when I hear from the bill, we require you to put a watermark on your thing that you're putting out there to, try and trick people or whatever the case may be. I mean, obviously there the onus would fall on the people making the tools. So Adobe, for example, has, hooks in their software that enable this, and they're working on that more. I could see, obviously, a company like Adobe being like, okay, great, we'll build a watermark in here so that it's easily identified. But there are a lot of people out there who have no interest in making their fake video easily identifiable to anyone. That's the point. So who knows how successful that'll be. But overall, this is a really fascinating kind of development that's happening in the world of technology, and really appreciate you taking time out of your day to talk to us about it. Samantha Cole is with Vice, vice.com. Where can people follow you online if they want to follow your work?
I'm on Twitter at Sam Lee Cole, or check out Motherboard on Vice. Right on.
Thank you again, Samantha. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Take care. And finally, you thought we were done with interviews because usually we do 3 to 4. We've got a 5th. This is like a supersized episode. I actually had the opportunity to chat with Dale Dougherty yesterday. He's the man behind Maker Media. And, there's some news around this, so why don't you go ahead and check out my interview with Dale. Now, some of you may heard the news over the weekend. I know I did. It made me sad. Maker Media, the company behind Make Magazine and Maker Faire, is closing down. Joining me to talk about this news is Dale Dougherty, founder and CEO of Maker Media. Dale, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you for having me.
It's really great to get you here. Although like I said, I'm sad that it's under these circumstances because Maker Faire, Make Magazine, everything you guys are doing is so and have for the last 15 years, super inspirational. Yeah. Talk a little bit about what has transpired to lead to the closing down of the operations as they are now.
Yeah. Well, I think it's kind of a business failure in a way. It's a structural the structure of the business doesn't work really well for what we're trying to do. And I've been trying to patch it for, a couple of years and keep it going. And it just seemed time to say, well, this just isn't working. It's really about, I think, to differentiate, something what I told our team is our mission is wonderful, right? Our business isn't so great. We've struggled, and sometimes you just have to kind of face that that's not going to get any better. And this was the last option we had. I don't think it's the end, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but it is a transformation or a restructuring that perhaps can put us in a better way ultimately to do what we want to do all along.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, one of the obvious, the things that people can really point to is the success, at least the seeming success of all of these maker fairs that are happening around the world. From an outside looking in, it looks like it's been an enormous success. But what has changed over the years? What's so challenging about that model?
Well, I think that, when we talk about Maker Faire, there are two that we produce,
right?
And New York and San Francisco, and then there's a network that we license out, and they're independently produced, and those will continue. They are doing well. While it may be a little bit of a morale issue for some people, I think they'll pick it up and keep going.
Sure.
The issue with Faire, and they are successful. We just did one 3 weeks ago, and was. Unfortunately, we had a lot of rain, but people still came out, and people loved the event.
Yeah.
And I just, sometimes you doubt yourself, but when I was in the midst of all those people there, and I said, this works, people love it. And it's important that we, are able to do it. But, we've had a diminishment in corporate sponsorship, which underwrites the event. We have sponsors and we sell tickets, and those are kind of the two pieces of revenue. And behind it, it's about taking the risk to do it. You don't know how many people are going to show up. You don't know whether it's going to rain. You don't know all these other things. And I think when we had more corporate sponsorship, it provided a bit of a buffer. So increasingly, it was falling on me to take all the risk in doing the event, and that just doesn't work. I've kind of personally got overextended with it, and so I have to step back and say, well, is there a different way of doing it, different way of looking at it? It's not the problem with the event; it's the problem of the financial risk in doing these events. So it's just kind of important to separate those out a little bit.
Yeah, the uncertainty of knowing what you're going to get on the other end. But as you said, the licensing of some of these events, that's still going to happen. Right?
Yeah, I will. I mean, the company's going through this restructuring process. It'll be, I hope I am trying to negotiate to get the assets of the company as the founder and to be able to make those kind of decisions in the future. Should someone else get them, they might not do what I would do with them. Yeah. So I'm in a bit of a struggle to get to the next phase here, but I'm pretty confident that I can get there. But then we're going to have to ask the community to support it in ways that they haven't in the past. But I'll tell you, the whole process going through this is a great sadness for me, but there's also great happiness hearing from people of what this has meant to them, how many years they've been involved with it, how it's kind of helped them get where they wanted to be in life. I don't know all the ways it's intersected with people, whether it's the event or the magazine, but it's really good to hear from people who tell me, hey, this makes a difference. This helped create a world that I became part of.
Absolutely. So you're not in this scenario. You're not filing for bankruptcy necessarily. You're moving toward a possible transition to nonprofit. Which, when I first heard this news, that was the thought that really came to mind. Maybe this would work in a better capacity as a nonprofit. But what does that look like? How does that transition happen? And how does that affect or change what the public sees from the outside looking in?
Well, I don't think it would change at all from the public. And most people thought we were a nonprofit, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, nonprofits have strong missions and then beg for funding.
Right.
I don't want to be that kind of nonprofit, though. I see us as, in some ways, like an association, where we have members and we do things that the members value and they have a voice in that. And that's the kind of nonprofit I'm thinking of. And it may be something else. I'm looking into co-ops and some other structures that might actually reflect the kind of community and economy that we want to build in this world. And that gets me excited because I think one of the issues is, how do you keep things going that the market doesn't necessarily value? Like that, education's one of them, print magazine's another one. Sure. And to some degree, a fair that is more about learning and exploration and creativity than it is about a trade show with, that's the difference that right now I'm trying to figure out how to protect the, what we've created and what it means. And then I'm trying to figure out how to sustain it so that future generations can benefit. So that's kind of the primary goals in thinking about what's the new structure going forward.
Okay. Now, I read that you mentioned in an interview a few days ago that the closure of your company is a sign of the changing times in San Francisco. I think I have a sense of what you mean by this, but I'm curious to kind of get your take. What do you mean by that exactly?
Well, I think Make has been and Maker Faire particularly has been part of a kind of countercultural effort to almost connected to the 60s, connected to a lot of, things like the Homebrew Computer Club that were not mainstream things. And I think, San Francisco's become increasingly about money and status. Yeah. And I think, that's not culture, right? That's just something else. And there has to be a place in our heart, if not in our city, for this kind of creative communities exploring and expressing themselves. And, maybe we go away, but, maybe we don't. But I'd say, people should ask, what kind of community do you want to support? What do you value? There are certainly companies here making billions of dollars. And I'm not sure they're creating an economy that's as participatory as we like, that benefits more and more people. And that really is my goal with the Maker Movement, that there are ways for you to learn, to get involved, to whether it's starting a business or solving an important social issue, helping others learn how to do things. This benefits lots of people, and not just a few people on Sand Hill. So, how do we ensure those things survive? How do we ensure that they in fact thrive? So that's kind of all I mean by it. I mean, it's not, San Francisco's still a great place, but it's, sometimes I went to visit a big company, a couple weeks ago that heard that we were having troubles, and it's one of those companies with billions of people. But they had this maker space in a first floor, took up the first floor. It was the best hardware you could ever imagine. And the people there are makers, and yes, they work in this big organization, but they love what they're doing. They're prototyping, they're doing hardware. And, we sometimes lose sight of that. And that those are the people creating value. Those are the people who are productive. And they see themselves as part of this movement. The company may not see that connection, but there are people within these companies that do. And I'm proud that they're part of what we do.
Yeah. And you've got a lot to be proud of. You guys have an awesome legacy. You've pulled, you've enlivened and, lit a spark in people. and
Absolutely.
help to kind of create, like when you talk about the maker movement, I feel like Maker Media and the work that you've done with Maker Faire and Make Magazine is such a huge part of that movement, and that's something to be super proud of. What about schools? Like, do you think?
Oh,
like
that's actually, if there's a legacy, and I don't like to think of it, as this in the past, but we have I think the most important impact the maker movement has had is coming in through the side door into schools.
Sure.
And teachers bringing in, students bringing in, and really changing the nature of learning in school. I have to say, our federal governments and state governments, the administrations, they're basically clueless. And they don't really seem to care about what real learning looks like. But I know what it is. I see it. And I've tried to spread it through bringing in maker spaces, giving kids the opportunity to explore and have ideas and develop those ideas. And, I believe that, to the degree that America is a leader in technology, it's because people often on their own, found ways to learn this way, and maybe a parent supported it or someone else. It wasn't, very often in schools. But I think if we want more people to participate in a tech economy, we better change our educational system so that they have the opportunity to use tools, learn how to use them effectively, and most importantly, exercise their creative mind so it becomes something really good.
Yeah, a lot of opportunity there. Speaking of opportunity, how can people who want to, be a part of helping out on this greater mission as you guys kind of move into this next direction, whatever the future has in store for you? Is there a way that people that are super driven and interested and want to be involved, is there a way that they can help you directly?
They can reach out to me. I'm dale.dougherty@gmail.com. I think, next week or so, I hope we can, set up something new that will allow people to become members of this new organization that will support Maker Fairs and make media. And we're going to need people to show support for that. So if people have other kinds of ideas, they can reach me. But right now I have to kind of ensure that I have the financial support to move forward.
Yeah.
And if people are willing to talk to me about that, I'd be happy to entertain. I'm headed to the Nation of Makers this Friday, Saturday, Sunday in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and I'll see a lot of people from the community there.
Awesome. Well, Dale, Maker Media has, in my opinion, been a success at waking people up, like I said, and bringing people into this movement. So you've got a lot to be proud of. Right. I'm really happy that you had a moment to hop on the show and talk with me today. Dale Dougherty, makermedia.com is where you can go to find all of this work. Where can people follow you online? Actually,
makezine.com and make.co are kind of the two domains that I've directed to you. Okay.
There we go. All right. And how about you? If they want to find you on Twitter?
I'm Dale PD, but I've kind of been off social media for a while, to be honest.
I understand. I kind of have myself. Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Dale. We'll talk to you soon. Best of luck.
Bye-bye.
Awesome interview with Dale. Really appreciate that he was able to hop on, and we missed you, Megan.
Yes, I was busy at the DMV.
You were DMVing, and so we miss you, and I'm sorry equally at the same time.
Yeah. If you missed my DMV trip, you can see it because I live tweeted it, which everyone wants to see that.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
You were there for like 3 hours, which sounds about right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome to the world of the DMV, folks. Tech News Weekly records live every Thursday at 11 a.m. Pacific, twit.tv/live. You can be part of the show by emailing us. We hope that you do. tnw@twit.tv.
And subscribe to our show at twit.tv/TNW. And if you're already subscribed and you like what you hear and you think someone else you know might also like to hear or watch what we do, send them a link. We'd love to spread the word. Word of mouth is the best way to spread the word about our show. And if you want to tweet at me, I'm at Megan Morrone.
And I'm at Jason Howell. Thanks to everyone who helps out in here. We've got Burke, John, Jeff. So many J's and then a B. What are you doing, Burke?
Burke is
seriously.
Burke runs this place. That's what he's doing.
And thanks to y'all for watching. We'll see you next week. I'll see you next week. Megan's out. She's going to Hawaii.
2 weeks.
2 weeks. So you got me for the next 2 weeks on Tech News Weekly. Bye, everybody.